Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that takes your career to the next level. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, author of Amazon Careers bestseller, Navigating Career Crossroads.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. Welcome back to my Careers podcast, where I interview fascinating professionals who have made significant career changes. Now today, I'm very fortunate to have Lindsay Spencer-Matthews on the show. Now Lindsay is a privately practicing psychologist who specialises in helping people have a rich, full and meaningful life in spite of their circumstances. Now, Lindsay has held several diverse roles in his career, and they're really quite interesting. From butcher delivery boy to corporate spy, multi-level marketer to security guard, actor to author, Lindsay's life has included heartache, tragedy, failure, triumphs, and extraordinary success. I don't know about you, but I can't wait to find out more. Now, he does not deliver life solutions from an ivory tower enveloped in that superior air some professionals encase themselves in. He's scraped his knees more than once and done dumb things too. It's these foibles and experiences that make him truly believable and engaging. Through his role now as great change maker, Lindsay is on a mission to change the world more than one person at a time. He does this through his corporation training and speaking activities, as well as his book, Why Clever People Do Dumb Things. His focus is on teaching individuals and organizations how to change those automatic behaviors and habits that sometimes frustratingly rule our business and personal lives. So let's welcome Lindsay to the podcast, and a big good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Jane. It's fantastic to be talking to you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your whole story, because this from butcher delivery boy all the way to actor and author, it sounds amazing.
It may need to become a series.
I think so. This may be more than one podcast. But anyway, I'm really glad to have you on the show. And you're the first person I'm interviewing in 2016, so that's great. So how about, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about your early days and what sort of career did you dream about when you were a little boy?
Well, I guess I'm the antithesis of what Jane Jackson's all about, because I never actually discovered what it was that I wanted to be when I grew up, and that is my story today as well. My dear old dad was a typewriter technician, and he was one of the pioneers of the computer age. He went to America when I was 12 to learn how to build those massive, clunky IBM-type computers that cost about $12 million and would now be eclipsed by your wristwatch. I grew up in an innovative household. My dad was an incredibly intelligent and well-meaning person, and everything that's decent about me I owe to him. Sadly, he died middle of last year. So I grew up with a father that never had a real career direction, and so I didn't have that in my genes. So I kind of wandered when I left school and found my way into sales and discovered that it was something that I was extremely good at, and spent the best part of 2 decades being a very successful salesman who had a fairly incredible turnover of jobs. I've always had trouble suffering fools gladly, and I've got a fairly high sense of integrity and morals. And so if an organisation or a product or a boss asked me to do something that compromised that, I was quite willing to leave, and did so many, many times, but was never out of work. So that's the early start of my career. It was, I guess I could almost be described as a dilettante, that I looked for the next shiny toy and was fortunate enough to be able to find it. I was incredibly lucky that it was a time of almost 100% employment. There was a time in the late 70s where I was retrenched, probably one of the worst experiences of my life. And I remember saying to my then wife that, there were 300,000 people unemployed and I was 300,001, and what was I going to do for a job? But I turned out I was only out of work about 2 weeks even then. So there you go. That's a brief glimpse into the early part of my career.
Now, it sounds interesting when you were saying about being retrenched in the late 70s. So obviously that was during a time of recession, and it only took you 2 weeks to get back on your feet again. Would you attribute that to your sales ability?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm an incredibly effective interviewee. It was unusual in those first 20 years of my working life for me not to be offered the job at interview. I remember I went for one job where the guy was doing over 100 interviews, and I was the first person, and he said, "I'm happy to tell the other 99 to go away." And it's indicative of where my head was at the time, is that I knocked the job back. So I think part of it was I was perceived as being in short supply, that one of my interview techniques was to very quickly try and get the interviewer to tell me why I would want to work for them. And that change of dynamic in the interview tended to be a really powerful one, that I was then coming from the position of relative authority and power, and it made it. Now, I think, in fairness, I have to say that in the 21st century, I would hope that HR people and interviewers are more sophisticated than they were back in the 70s and 80s. But I would still recommend that as a technique for people to respect what you're bringing to the job, and literally say to the people, why would someone like me be a good fit and wish to come and work within your organisation? And there's no reason why that wouldn't cast you in a really good light.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, I'm a career coach, and I assist people with their interview techniques as well. And too many people sit in an interview and wait for people to ask them questions, and then they just respond, rather than thinking a bit more consultatively and thinking, how would I be a good fit? So good technique way back in the 70s, Lindsay. Well done. Now, back to you, because this is all about you today. I want to find out, because in your bio, you have told me that you had a bit of a stint as a corporate spy. Now, what's going on there?
Well, that was a very interesting 2 years of my life. I was employed by probably one of the nicest men I've ever met, and I think I'll do my best to keep the identity of the organisation off the air. But this was a large multinational organisation who was engaged in the world of corporate credit reporting. And they were attempting at that stage to encourage other large organisations to literally for no money to give them their debtors ledger on a monthly basis on electronic format, so that this company could aggregate it and then sell that information in aggregate form to the rest of the world. And it was quite a radical concept, and they had been trying for nearly 5 years to get it to work. And I think there had been 8 predecessors prior to me, and between the 8 of them, they had managed to encourage something like 5 organisations to contribute. So the pool of information wasn't enough to be able to use, because it had to be confidential. You couldn't be able to identify who had contributed the information. And so this wonderful man, ex-Vietnam vet, phenomenal guy, employed me. And when he rang and offered me the job, he said, "I'm offering you this job because I can't do it, and I think you can. And I'm willing to give you whatever help you need, but I'm not going to be able to teach you or do anything other than be a support person to you. Are you willing to take it on that basis?" And that's like heroin to me. And and so
the challenge.
I formed a collaboration with this guy and I told him it will take me at least 6 months to get any results. And that was one of the problems, was that they expected people to be able to go out into the corporate world and just convert people. And I knew it was going to be a very long relationship sell. And so I bought that first 6 months from him. And at the end of that 6 months, that 6th month, I think I bought 18 large companies on board. And it went on from there. Though I think I bought in 12 the next month and 11 the next month, and it was just a really a slow sales cycle, and none of them had realised it. And because I was a professional salesperson, I realised that was what they were doing wrong. And so yeah, it was a fascinating thing to do. I really loved it. I loved the guy that I worked for. His first name was Rod, so if he ever listens to this, he'll know that I'm talking him up very well here. And yeah, it was a really exciting time.
God, that sounds absolutely amazing. I think it must have been quite an exciting time for you in your career as well. And so how long were you doing that before you moved on?
Well, I was doing that for 2 years, and that was unfortunately my second retrenchment.
Oh.
I'm a fairly difficult person to manage. The wonderful man that employed me realised that for me to thrive, I needed autonomy. Unfortunately, his boss, who happened to be the general manager of the company, was a micromanager, and he believed that a manager's job is to control. And so the general manager and I were at loggerheads from day one, basically. And when I started to get phenomenal results, their whole remuneration package was based on small numbers. And because of the numbers that I was bringing in, they'd not anticipated that anyone would be as successful as I was. I was earning a fabulous amount of money, and the general manager took that very badly and ultimately changed the structure of the company purely to get rid of me.
Oh, that was a bit drastic, wasn't it? But you know what I'm noticing here is that there's a bit of a trend, because if you're hard to manage, you like to work really autonomously, do it your way, plus very, very strong sales capabilities, that's veering towards entrepreneurship, isn't it? Because a lot of entrepreneurs display those tendencies too.
Definitely, and as I'm sure you realise, as an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship is a really challenging field to be in. It's common knowledge that entrepreneurs fail more than most people, and the combination of risk, embracing risk, and being willing to tolerate failure is a fairly thin part of the gene pool, I think.
Yeah, and I think also as long as you really believe in what you've got to offer as well, and that never say die attitude, of course entrepreneurs, they're going to fail, they're going to get back up again, get knocked down again, get back up again. But that's part of the challenge and the fun, isn't it?
It is, but there's a number of elements that entrepreneurs need to succeed, and one of those is an ability to get on with people, to be able to nurture networks and put up with people's idiosyncrasies and those kind of things. And I think, in all honesty, I have to say that's one area that I don't shine in as an entrepreneur.
Okay, well, moving on then, Lindsay. Now, there's more interesting stuff in your career that I really want to delve into, because we've got multi-level marketer to security guard. So what was going on? Tell me a bit about the multi-level marketing side first.
Well, my wife and I had the good fortune. We worked very hard to do it as well. We became relatively wealthy through real estate investment, and so I stopped work for about 5 years, and it was in 2001. We had a little boy, and we decided to be full-time parents, and unequivocally the best 5 years of my life. Sorry, I got sidetracked a moment there, reflecting on how wonderful that 5 years was.
Oh, well, the thing is that starting a family and having children, it's part of that rich tapestry of life, and it's lovely that it sort of gets you a little bit emotional, and you remember all the wonderful sides of it as well. So you were enjoying family life. Both of you had taken time off away from the corporate life and working. And so how did you get into multi-level marketing? Was this something you decided to dabble in because it would be fun, or what was it?
One of the triggers for it was that I was diagnosed with leukemia in 2003. Oh. And I'm the luckiest man in the world. I tell that to people frequently. And there's roughly 4 types of leukemia you can get. And if they passed a law saying people had to have leukemia, everyone would want the one I've got. It's a very slow-moving white cell. Leukemia means a cancer of the blood, basically. Yeah. And my body was producing white blood cells that were unhealthy and that didn't die in their normally allotted 30 days, that mine have a tendency to endure for years and years and years, some of them. And it's environmentally triggered, I discovered, that it's either electromagnetic fields or toxins in the food or personal healthcare supply. And so I actively went looking for ways to reduce my exposure to toxins. And it was I discovered this company by sheer chance, and the only way you could access their products was through multi-level marketing. And I had already explored the world of MLM from a business perspective because I think it's the most democratic business that you can get. And so I decided to kill two birds with the one stone. We put a fair amount of effort into MLM over a couple of years and discovered that we're not the kind of people that are necessarily going to succeed. I've always been an intellectual salesperson, not a pushy salesperson. And if people don't want to buy from me, I'm totally happy with that. But my observation about success in MLM is that it tends to be the people that relentlessly follow up their downline and are a little bit pushy and are willing to burn people by pressuring them. That's the generalisation that I would make about MLM success. And it wasn't for me. So we continue to support that company to this day. We've still got a downline to this day. We still get a check every month. It's only a measly few $100 now, but it's better than the poking nail with a hot stick, and it doesn't cost us anything to do it. So yeah, I'm a fan for MLM, and I have in my network of friends a number of people who make good money out of multi-level marketing, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because a number of my clients have asked me about multi-level marketing as well, and you do need that strong determination and relentless energy to continue to sell all the time. Because if you're not selling, you're not going to be able to grow your territory and grow the number of people who are going to be getting on board as well.
And one of the ways that MLM is often missold to people is that all you need to do is produce a downline, and then they'll produce a downline, and they'll produce a downline. And that's, on the surface of it, that makes sense. But if that was the case, Coke wouldn't need to advertise.
Yeah.
And the reality is you've got to be continuing to motivate your downline and to get them to motivate their downline and get them. And the people that succeed are the people that see it as a normal kind of a job, and they define what their KPIs and their duties are, and they go about that on a daily basis. And they then winnow out from their downline the other people who are willing to do that, and you end up with a whole bunch of people doing what you're doing, and it becomes a very robust and relatively stable business.
Yes, I know a number of people personally who've done very well out of it, but they do work very, very hard at it.
Yes, indeed.
In order to make it a success. And it's not. A lot of people get into it thinking it's going to be quite easy, but actually it's not. So now, multi-level marketing, so that's still ticking along in the background, although that's not your main business at all now. What about this security guard actor bit in your career? Where does that fit in?
Okay, well, those things are not put in any kind of temporal order. When I was in my early 20s as a young married parent, we were desperately trying to save the deposit for a house, so I drove a taxi for a few years, and then I became a security guard for a few years, both as part-time jobs. And I think I'd rather be a security guard than a taxi driver, but it's a fine line, because I got shot at once as a security guard, and I arrested somebody once as a security guard. So they were the most interesting things, but the more interesting stories out of the taxi industry.
Yes, I'm sure. Actually, it's funny that you should say you're a security guard. I'll share a little-known secret about me, is that I also was a security guard at one stage. Who would have thought,
That's great.
Little half Chinese, half English girl. It was when I was at university in Minnesota, and I worked on student security, and I used to go patrolling all of the academic and the dorm buildings and locking all the doors and busting parties, but I got invited to more parties than I busted, so I wasn't very good at it. It was not a career path for me either. Oh
dear. Well, unfortunately mine was nowhere that romantic. I was an armed security guard looking after all sorts of interesting things, and yes, it was a challenging job.
Yeah, but what it shows is you've got to do what you've got to do, especially in the early days when you're trying to build up your nest egg as well. And you think, okay, so do I need to take 2 or 3 jobs on? Am I going to be, am I actually willing to try something new or something different in order to get the money coming in? Sometimes it's a matter of necessity. And what about acting? You were an actor at some stage too.
Yes, I'm an enthusiastic supporter of amateur theatricals, straight theatre and musical theatre, and I've had the lead role in a number of amateur roles. It's been absolutely fantastic. Applause is another drug. Once you've stood on stage, as I'm sure you've done with your speaking work, that once you've got 400 or 500 people giving you applause for something you've just delivered, it's a phenomenal feeling, and the camaraderie that exists in amateur theatre through all working towards a common goal, everybody having the right intent of being there, and then delivering at the end, and even if it's imperfect, the audience is forgiving as well. It's just a fantastic experience. I love it.
It's a little bit like a huge adrenaline rush and a bit of a drug, isn't it?
Totally.
Now, here's another thing. We have so much in common, Lindsay. We're just discovering this over the podcast. I also love amateur drama. And in Singapore, I used to be part of the Singapore Stage Club, and we did all of these pantomimes. And you're absolutely right. 3 months of rehearsals where everyone becomes really, really close to each other. You get to know each other so well. And then finally, when you get, the opening night, it's so exciting. And it's such a downer when the run ends. When it's the end and it's the final curtain, you think, oh, I know I've got to wait for another year before the next pantomime comes around, because I just do panto. I'm not a very good actress. I just enjoy being very dramatic about certain things. But definitely lots and lots of fun. Now...
sorry, just as an aside, I did the lead in a Ben Elton play called Silly Cow, and the male lead anyway. Yeah. And I delivered the whole thing in a Cockney accent. And at the end of one of the nights, the actors mingle with the audience in amateur theatre, and this fellow came up to me and to congratulate me on the night, and I said, "Oh, thanks very much." And he reared back. He said, "Good God, you're not really a Cockney." So,
isn't it great being able to put on different voices? And Lindsay, you have had such a rich life. It's so interesting. And then now you're an author, the author of Why Clever People Do Dumb Things, and you're a psychologist. Now, you now have become, I want to come into present day and what you're doing now. You are now the great change maker. Tell me about your business now, and exactly what do you do, and how are you changing the world more than one person at a time?
Okay, the genesis of the name was a wonderful woman named Heather Yelland, who runs youth camps pretty much all over the world. And we were talking about the evolution of my career, and she just said, well, really, you're the great change maker, is what you do. And so that we decided to run with that, not through any inflated ego thing of, I'm great and I'm the change maker. It's that I have the capacity to facilitate great change in people's lives. And it's always bothered me. I know empirically that I'm a very intelligent person. I've been tested again and again and again as part of my journey to become a psychologist. And it's always niggled at the back of my mind how somebody who as demonstrably intelligent as me, how could such a person do so many stupid things? And I finally found the answer, and it was only about 7 or 8 years ago that it finally all came together, that everything gelled professionally and personally for me, and that was where I guess the genesis of the book began, where I finally worked out why clever people do dumb things, and that path ultimately led me to the book. And the idea of the book is that I only get to see, even though I've got a very busy psychological practice, I only get to see 250 to 300 people a year. And that's really frustrating because the majority of those people experience phenomenal change. I measure the change that exists in my clients, and on average, I double their sense of well-being in approximately 6 sessions. So I know that I'm really good at what I do. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to expose it to a broader audience. And so that's why I began to open my career up to, to public speaking, to doing talks at Lions clubs and those sorts of things, and to writing the book. So that's where the Great Changemaker is hopefully taking me.
Oh, that sounds so interesting. Now, where can people find this book?
They can find it on Amazon, but I don't necessarily recommend that. It's a really difficult site to negotiate, I find. But if they really wanted to, they could get it there. They could visit my website, which is greatchangemaker.com.au, or they could send me an email at lindsay@greatchangemaker.com.au, and I'll make sure if they're happy to get an electronic version of it, then I'm happy to give it to them for free. Or I'll give them mates rates if they wanted to buy one.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll be putting these on the show notes on my website at janejacksoncoach.com, and I'll have Lindsay's email address as well as his website and also Twitter handle there, which happens to be at Great Changemaker, which is GR, the number 8, Changemaker, if you want to follow Lindsay on Twitter as well. Okay, and so now tell me a little bit about your psychological practice as well. Psychology practice, rather.
Okay. Well, I've been a psychologist for 21 years now. I practiced in Melbourne before my wife and I moved up to Queensland and started our little family of one, or three, I should say. And I then went into optional retirement, went spectacularly broke about probably 8 years ago now, I think. And that necessitated me generating an income again, and so I went back into psychology. And I keep saying I'm the luckiest man in the world. I was basically, by economic circumstances, driven back to doing what I love. And I do a lot of kind of philosophical pondering, and I wonder whether that's what the universe actually wants me to do, which is, why it wasn't willing to let me stay wealthy. But if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I get to spend, I work 4 11-hour days a week, and it's so good that at the end, when I finish work at about 7:30 at night, most days I walk out the front and go, wow, it's dark. I don't even, it feels like I've been at work for 10 minutes, even though I've spent 8 hours face-to-face with clients. So, my objective is to help people change the way they think about the way they think. And I got a real insight into it in a talk that I did for a group of business people a couple of months ago. And at the end of it, I always open my small talks up to questions. And this one guy put his hand up and he said, Lindsay, I don't mean to trivialise what you've just told us, but it really just seems like common sense. And I said, thanks, that's a really nice insight. Do you mind if I ask the group a couple of questions before I respond to it? He said, yeah, go for it. And I said, who agrees with our friend here that what I've just described to you sounds like common sense? Well, everyone put their hands up. I said, that's fantastic. Means I've got an intelligent audience. That's brilliant. I said, now put your hands up again if you had ever actually thought about it in the context that I put it to you today. And not one hand went up. I said, what does that tell you about common sense? Common sense is available to intelligent people, but they don't tend to use it. And my job as a psychologist and an author and a public speaker is to awaken common sense where it's possible. And unfortunately, you've got to have a modicum of intelligence to be able to have any real common sense. So there is a proportion of the population that will never understand what I'm talking about. But in business, you find that I'm talking to the 85% of people who are in the normal or above range of intelligence, and it resonates and they get it, and it changes their lives, and that is just so exciting.
It's that aha moment that suddenly someone thinks, oh, for goodness sake, I knew that. Why didn't I act on it?
Absolutely, yeah, it's fantastic. Getting back to what we said about earlier about the interview technique, I think one of the secrets of life is asking meaningful questions. There's a lovely quote floating around Facebook somewhere from the Dalai Lama that says, if you're speaking things, you're only saying things that you know. Yeah. But if you are asking questions, you're likely to learn something that you never knew.
Yes, I saw that as well. It's so insightful. The more you listen, the more you learn. And there's something that keeps coming across as we're talking, Lindsay. You absolutely exude joy and positivity. It's like you just, it's nice just listening to you talk. When will your next public talk be?
Well, I haven't got a public one scheduled as yet. I've taken a bit of a break. 2015 was a really challenging year for me on a number of fronts, and I'm so encouraged that that's what's coming through in this conversation because one of the things that I say to my clients is, if I can consider myself the luckiest man in the world, there's no reason why you can't. that I've got a lot of stuff that doesn't work in my life, and that should be no impediment to you feeling as though you're the luckiest person in the world. So I don't have another public talk. I'm doing talks for closed groups for psychologists and people like that. But I haven't got a public talk arranged. Sounds like you're feeling there might be a demand for it, Jane.
I think there will be, and certainly the minute there is, you better tell me, because I'm going to promote it like a crazy person.
Thank you. I would respond to that in a heartbeat.
Oh, that would be wonderful. It's so interesting talking to you, and unfortunately, I need to wind it up as I've got a certain time limit here. But I've got to have you back on the show again. I want to delve more into the power of positivity. I want to find out why clever people do dumb things, and also find out a lot more about all of your stories too, because I think we've got an awful lot in common. Now, I've got a special offer, or you are offering a special offer for my podcast listeners, and I'm just going to go through that now so everybody knows what it is. Okay, so what Lindsay is providing is, he's very kindly providing to our podcast listeners a significant discount on his workplace mentoring sessions, and these sessions are designed to provide you with a neutral, experienced and qualified professional to bounce ideas off, gain perspective on issues, or to just explore important decisions or life transitions. So 50 minutes work mentoring session, which is delivered via Skype or phone, normally costs $330 plus GST. However, for a limited time, Lindsay is happy to discount that by over 50% to $150, including GST. Now, that's a really, really good bargain for this amazing coaching opportunity. So whether it be for work or your personal life, engaging a personal mentor gives you a safe and confidential arena to help you get through extraordinary life transitions. And Lindsay has helped over 300 clients a year to maintain or get their lives back on track. He uses a style that, whilst challenging, is very collaborative and works together with you to find workable solutions in a short amount of time. Now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So to redeem this, please email the great changemaker himself, info@greatchangemaker.com.au, and just mention this podcast, Jane Jackson Careers, and you will get the special discount. So that's a very generous offer, Lindsay. And I just want to repeat, his book, Why Clever People Do Dumb Things, can be found on his website, which is greatchangemaker.com.au. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, Lindsay?
The only thing that occurred to me as you were giving me that very generous plug was that given that we've given the Twitter handle of GR8 Changemaker, the website is fully spelled out. It's GREAT Changemaker. So that's the only thing there. But thank you, Jane. You've been incredibly generous with that, and I've had a lot of fun. It's been a delight talking to you.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Security guard. We've both been security guards. We've both been in Amdram. We both like being on the stage. I have not done any spying. I haven't done the James Bond thing. I'm not Jane Bond, but I think I might need to give that a go at some stage.
And I've tried, when people have said, have asked me to introduce myself, I've tried saying Spencer-Matthews, Lindsay Spencer-Matthews, and it just doesn't work.
No, but I think you'll be able to make people laugh as well, and certainly I'm feeling very much on a high after talking to you. That was great. So thank you so much for your time. We will be having Lindsay Spencer-Matthews back in 2016 for sure, and look for all of the information on my show notes at Jane Jackson Careers or JaneJacksonCoach.com. Thanks again, Lindsay, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Jane. Cheers.
Okay, bye. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and free 30-day trial at audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers. There are over 180,000 book titles to choose, so give it a go and get your free audiobook today from audibletrial.com/Jane Jackson Careers.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at JaneJacksonCoach.com.